This is a lovely little alternative to your flour-based wraps that you buy in the shops. Again, those refined flours, things like that, best to avoid. And a great thing with flaxseed is it's very, very high in omega-3, which is unusual for a lot of seeds. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to take 100 grams to make my wrap. I'm going to take 100 grams of flaxseed, whole flaxseed. I'm going to pop it into a liquidizer, and I'm going to make, I'm going to make a flaxseed flour. So 100 grams in there. I'm just going to mill that in the liquidizer, and put the lid on top. There we go. And put that into a fine flour. Also, I'm going to put into that a half teaspoon of baking powder and just a little pinch of salt. And just simply mill that into a nice flour. Takes a few minutes, a couple of seconds even, and then you'll see a nice kind of sandpaper kind of, just a nice little flour. Now to use this, we're going to use kind of an Asian method, which is a hot dough. So we're going to boil about 180 ml of water to the 100 grams of flaxseed flour, and we're going to cook it into a dough, and that'll help it all hold together. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring my water to a nice boil. And then I've already decanted my flaxseed flour, which as you can see is lovely, kind of floury, kind of like a coarse whole grain flour. I'm just going to add that all into my water at once. And that should thicken up and will form into a nice dough. Just let it cook through a little while, until it starts to leave the sides of the pot. And you want this, don't forget you'll be rolling this out, so we'll be cooling this down and letting it thicken up then. So this is your hot flaxseed dough, which will be the base for our wrap. As you can see, it's just cooking out nicely, leaving the sides. And then I'm just going to store this in a very, very lightly oiled bowl, so it just doesn't all stick together. You see the way it's just all sticking together now? That'll form into a nice dough. Okay, so we're just going to put our base and let that cool down a little bit so we can actually work with it then. So again, I'm going to just let that sit in the fridge just for a few minutes until it becomes workable with. So we'll come back in, that might let it rest for about 20 to 30 minutes at least. And to roll my wrap, I'm going to get a piece of slightly oiled greaseproof paper. I'm going to divide my mix into 3. I'm just going to put a spoonful of the now warm mixture on a sheet of greaseproof paper. Place the other one on top, just pour that into a nice kind of a ball shape so that it rolls out. Place your other sheet of greaseproof paper on top, and then lightly roll it out. And this is a good way of stopping this mixture sticking, and you can just form it into a nice, you could use a plate or something to be really precise with it, but I think it's just nice like this. But if you have to wait, you don't want this to go cold, but you want it a little bit warm, just so that you can get this nice finish on your wrap. Again, when you're rolling, don't go too thin or thick, but this is just a nice, easy way to transfer it over to your cooker so that you can cook it nice and neatly. You can just neaten it up around by the edges. And that's ready for cooking now. And then to finish, and just let my wrap cool a little on the cling film, or on a greaseproof paper, excuse me. And then I've added a little bit of coconut oil to this pan. Then I'm going to simply place my wrap onto the pan. And then very, very carefully, as it starts to cook, I'm going to lift the greaseproof paper away from it. Now be very, very careful with this, take your time. The pan's on a nice low heat. And once you get it down there, we'll let it start to cook away. And it will then start, hopefully then, lifting away from your pan. Just make sure you use a good non-stick pan. So we're going to just let that cool to a nice low heat until it starts, all the moisture starts to come out of it and it starts forming into our wrap. Now do take your time with this, cook it at a low heat. You have to let this this flaxseed dry out quite a bit. Any of the moisture you want it to come out of it. And you'll see that on the sides there, it's starting to lift away from the pan a little bit easy, but it's still very, very delicate. So take your time and let it as much dry out as bake. Now after a few minutes, just nice slow cooking, you're as much drying as cooking this flaxseed. Don't forget there's no gluten or like a flour to hold this together, so it is very, very delicate. So when you're dealing with things like this, just take your time. And eventually it'll start to come together like a little pancake. As you can see, it suddenly starts moving around the pan. And at this point, a good way of turning this is to use a plate. With something delicate like this, I'd be very cautious flipping it. And I'm going to just very, very quickly turn it out onto the plate, just like in one motion. There we go. Then just gently slide it back on and just give the other side a quick clean. Or a quick, excuse me, not clean. A quick cooking. And as you can see, it's cooked through nicely and it's holding into that nice wrap now at this stage. And just let it all seal there together then. Okay, and doesn't need much cooking on the other side because it's already coming together now nicely. So at this point, it's a good idea to put it directly onto the plate that you're hoping to serve it on. Take the plate, a little wipe, same plate that I used to turn it out on. I'm just going to put it out on the plate. And now it's all ready for filling. Now to finish this wrap, as you might with any sandwich, a nice little cooked wrap. And on an earlier recipe you'll find this lovely sun-dried tomato hummus. So I'm going to just use a couple of nice generous spoonfuls of hummus on the wrap, spread it through. Next up, some nice lettuce of your choice. Use a nice whole leaf, not the small little leaves. A little bit of tomato. And then finally, some tuna, which has been cooked in in spring water. Avoid tunas or any fish if you can that have been preserved in or canned in any of the seed oils. Olive oil or spring water is the best. And that is a little dabble of hummus just on the top to act as a little bit of glue to tuna. Fold it over. And there we have it. Our flaxseed wrap. Very, very simple, very healthy, full of omega-3 fatty acids. Very, very good choice for a nice little lunch dish or summer's day dish.